Welcome to the Idaho Real Estate Investor Show, where we bring strategies and knowledge that will help you succeed in Idaho's ever-changing real estate market. I'm Jonna Weber. I'm an Idaho investor, realtor, and entrepreneur. I've been successfully investing for over 2 decades and helping countless others do the same. We'll bring you real stories from successful investors, expert advice, and insights to help you build generational wealth through the power of real estate. Whether you're just getting started or well on your way, let's jump in. Welcome to the show. I'm Jonna, and I'm thrilled today to be here with our guest, Beau Webb. And Beau is quite a go-getter. He's new to the Boise area. He'll explain how the move to Boise came about, but he is a West Point graduate, former Army helicopter pilot, and he let his passion for creating financial freedom for himself and his family fuel a full-bore strategy in a real estate investing business. And we're so excited to unpack how that came about. You're going to be even more impressed when you hear how quickly Beau has been able to do what he's accomplished in real estate investing. So, Beau, thank you so much for joining us on the Idaho Real Estate Investor Show.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
My pleasure. I know I alluded to the fact you're new to Boise already, but how new are you exactly?
We moved here in July.
Oh my gosh.
Moved here in July. We were staying in an Airbnb for a little bit, downtown Boise, and now we're in Meridian, but still pretty new here overall.
Welcome. Oh, that's so, and we got to know each other just a couple months after you jumped in, started to get involved in meeting local investors, joined Boise Marine, and we're so happy to have you in the community. Let's go back to the beginning, because you just came to Boise, but where did you grow up?
I grew up in Texas, born and raised in Texas, born in Amarillo, Texas, and then lived in Central Texas, small town called Lampasas, about an hour north of Austin.
Okay, there's good
folks in Texas. Great place to grow up for sure.
My son went to college in Texas, and we spent a lot of time in Fort Worth.
Oh, nice.
That was
I got
fun.
a lot of family in DFW area.
Go Horn Frogs. So, okay, so grew up in Texas, and then you went to West Point.
Yes.
And I just want to pause on that for a minute. That's no small accomplishment. Like, what led you to that campus? Did you always have a dream you were going to go to a school like West Point?
No, it came about later in my time in high school that I was looking into the service academies. My dad had considered going to the Naval Academy, and that didn't end up working out. But yeah, around my junior and senior year, I just started considering that as a way to potentially get school paid for. I don't know if you know how service academies work, but it's free. You go there for 4 years, and then when you graduate, you owe the Army or the branch of service that you're in 5 years of service. So that seemed like a good option for me. And yeah, they really developed their students there in leadership and military training. And it just seemed like an awesome way to get started in life and then have the opportunity to serve in the military after that.
Well, thank you for your service. So you graduate from West Point, and did you already know exactly what position you were going to take in the Army?
I did not. So when you graduate, or before you graduate, you put in preferences for different branches within the Army. And I put in aviation as my top selection, my top branch, and ended up getting that. It's based off kind of class rank and different factors they look at. So I got aviation because it seemed like a cool job to have in the Army. I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do, but it seemed appealing from the cool factor. And then aviators in the Army are known for being the people that need 8 hours of rest before they work the next day, and they sleep inside a little bit more than some of the impressive infantry guys that are sleeping in the dirt and getting 1 hour of rest.
Yeah.
So at the time, it seemed like an appealing branch of the Army, and that's what I put in for, and that's what I got.
Perfect. How old were you at that point?
I would have been 22 or 23.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Did you have family that had served in the military?
Like grandparents and great-grandparents, no immediate family that had served in the military.
Oh, nice. They must be really proud. And so you graduate, you were in New York. That's where West Point is, correct?
Correct.
And then where was your first assignment? Because I know that led into kind of how you jumped into real estate in a roundabout way.
Right. So because I got aviation, my first actual assignment was Fort Rucker, Alabama, which is where Army's aviation headquarters is. So I was there for flight school for about 1.5 to 2 years. And then after that, my first big boy assignment, once I graduated flight school, I was in North Carolina outside of Fort Bragg, which is the biggest military base population-wise in the country.
Oh, yeah. I lived in North Carolina for a
Oh,
couple
yeah.
of years, so I'm quite familiar with Fort Bragg and met a lot of military people who were living back there too. And so you were in Alabama, then North Carolina. At what point, or I guess I should back up, like, did you at that time think that military was going to be a long-term career for you?
I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure. I wanted to set myself up for in the military, if I wanted it to be that way, that I would do well and be able to progress in my career, but I wasn't sure. So I went into it with just ready to learn and unsure as to how long it would last for. Pretty early on, not super early on, but as I took different assignments and learned in the military, I just learned a lot about myself, things that I was good at, things that I wasn't as good at that I didn't know, and then things that I valued personally, autonomy and time freedom and the ability to choose which projects I spend my time and focus on, and realized that maybe the military wasn't something, especially as I thought about in the future, hopefully having a family, wasn't something that I would want to do for forever, which kind of got me looking into other ways to give myself options in the future, and real estate, long story short, became like the most obvious option for me to do that.
Right.
Mhm.
It seems like I've met quite a few people over the years that have had successful military careers, and I would think that some of the habits that you are forced to deliver on
Yeah,
in the military can lend itself to making it very simple to maintain good habits, because I think when you don't have that kind of structure, sometimes if someone comes in maybe with a typical, we call it W-2 income, it's expectation of like what's the very minimum I can do, but I
right.
know you can't do the very minimum in the military and literally survive sometimes. Do you think that attributed to your drive and success
Yeah,
in investing?
big time. I was super blessed to be in the military and learned a ton from just the culture and the standards and just the common kind of beliefs and values there regarding hard work and discipline and structure and a lot of just specific tactics, like not like military tactics, but tactics as far as how they are organized and how they complete a task that I still use as just a Joe Blow real estate investor in my personal life now.
Okay.
Hmm.
Just a Joe Blow real estate investor. Let's get into this, because a lot of people, military or not, just consider themselves a success if they are able to acquire 2 to 3 properties in their first decade of real estate investing. And I know that you've done much more than that. So I'm excited to get into the nuts and bolts. How did it start, though? What was your first acquisition? How did the process get started with you
Yeah.
purchasing
So
property?
a little bit before that, the process got started. I was living in renting a home with three other friends in the military, just splitting rooms and paying rent and learning about what's it like to be in the military. And here's my new job that I'm assigned to. Here's how I'm spending my time. And as I came home at 6, 7 p.m. at night, I was like, this is tough, but this is the big boy world. I had a mentor of mine. He'd been a high school football coach that I stayed in touch with. And he'd been a mentor in other regards, but he reached out just at the right time and said, "Hey, we haven't really talked about like finances, personal finances, and investing." And he had since left academics and was a mobile home park investor, which to me just sounded insane at the time. A mobile home park and a couple storage facilities. But I said, "Yeah, I'd be interested to talk about this." And he said, "I'm going to send you a couple books." So he sent me Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I had never heard of. He sent me Your Money or Your Life by Vicki Robin and The
Fun.
4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss. I hadn't heard of any of them, but he paid for the books and sent them to me, and I said, I'm definitely going to read these. And Rich Dad Poor Dad, it was just like a slap in the face, just woke me up to a different way to view the world, really, just to view how money works and how investments can work and how you can either live off your income and that's the end of it, or you can siphon some of that income into assets that then produce income of their own that you can eventually someday maybe live off just that income. And then
Right.
you're left with time to buy more assets or to do something else that's meaningful. Sorry. So that a long way of saying my mentor turned me on to some books that turned me on to real estate. Um,
And I love that you actually read them.
yeah.
Like, because I mean, I don't take that lightly, because a lot of You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. And I've done that, like wanted to like mentor people and like, oh, just do this. And you think you're helping them by giving them like a free book or something like that. And we connect 3 months later and they haven't picked it up. So just that action set you apart.
Maybe so. I'm thankful that he sent me the books. But yeah, I read through those and through a series of looking into other resources. Bigger Pockets was a big one, and talking to other people that were investors, whether real estate or not. Just a lot of things pointing me towards, hey, real estate is the path for someone that has a demanding job to start building something slowly or at whatever pace on the side in conjunction with your responsibilities that you already have. And it made sense immediately for me to try to house hack. House hack was as I learned about the possibility of owning a property that could possibly even pay me to live there, but if nothing else would subsidize my mortgage or my housing expense. That seemed like the obvious first step, and it was my first step. So I started looking at properties. I said, hey, a duplex in Fayetteville, North Carolina, which is where I was. This is how I get started and see if this is something for me. Didn't have an agent that I was working with at the time, didn't really know anything about that or what is a good agent or what is a good property. I was just totally new. So just on Zillow looking at multifamily properties, there was a duplex at the time, a few duplexes, and I reached out to whatever agent was, I don't know if his agent assigned to that listing or just the Zillow feature, like I'm interested, and started getting calls, but ultimately found a duplex that needed some work but wasn't in terrible shape. That became my first property. I bought that duplex for $108,000. That's a cheaper price point there. It's still a cheaper price point, but you can't get a duplex for $108,000.
That is amazing. We had a couple of years back here during the recession where we got pretty close, but
really?
now it's more like 5 or 6 times that.
Yeah, unfortunately. But yeah, that duplex, my payment on it was about $800, $790 if I remember right, with taxes and insurance. And the tenant in the other side paid $800 for rent. So month one, I realized, hey, this tenant is paying my mortgage in this duplex. And I had a roommate at the time also that was getting a good deal, paying $300 or so to live with me. So I was pocketing $300 plus the military housing allowance that they gave me at the time.
Wow.
So quickly I realized, hey, this can be a huge benefit to me financially to help me save and potentially do this again sooner than I thought I might be able to.
And was this with a VA loan?
I used an FHA loan.
FHA,
I totally would have used the VA loan on that, but the sellers, for whatever reason, weren't keen on a VA buyer. I think they had the idea that VA loans or VA appraisals or whatever in the process is not as certain, or they just didn't want to deal with the hassle. I don't think that's a good way of looking at it.
I don't either.
Yeah, the VA loan is an incredible benefit, and it's a great way to purchase properties from the buyer or seller perspective.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I wouldn't want to dissuade anyone from working on utilizing that great program. So you use FHA.
Yep, which is like the same thing from
right,
their perspective.
Exactly.
I was like, all right,
the same thing for the seller too, pretty much.
Exactly.
So then the difference for the audience, just as a background, if you're not familiar with different types of appraisals, when you have a VA loan,
VA or FHA.
FHA loan or VA loan, the appraisal goes a little bit deeper into the house and looks in the crawl space if there is one, looks in the attic, and just make sure that everything is keen from a safety measure.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I ended up using the FHA loan, which the VA loan, you have the opportunity to put 0% down as a military member or a veteran. FHA, you have to put 3.5% down. That was still appealing to me at the time, so that's what I did. So yeah, at the time, it was important for me to not have to put a large down payment down. Had I needed to put 10 or 20% down, I wouldn't have been able to do it at the time. So it was huge for me to get into a property at that time, putting little down, and that also became my strategy for the next few purchases. I used VA on the next 2 purchases on 4plexes.
Wow. So you moved around a lot.
I did, yeah.
Were you single at the time?
I was single at the time. I met my wife. She would become my wife when I was at flight school, my last day there, the day I graduated. And we stayed in touch. But at the time, I was a geo bachelor. We were dating. We got engaged later, obviously. But yeah, when I was just a single dude living there, it was easy for me to be willing to live wherever I needed to live to buy real estate.
I think that's so brilliant. I've got a son that just got married this summer.
Nice.
I've been all about the house hacking and
Yeah,
all those ideas. It's not quite as simple once you're a married couple
definitely
is what
not.
we found.
Yeah.
And I don't blame them whatsoever, but when you're single and able to be nimble like that, it's such a great idea to use those benefits. And we just need to keep that message out to get more people taking advantage of that because
Yeah.
you're just the way you set yourself up in the next 5 and 10 years, as we're about to hear, is so meaningful. So let's go to you purchased the fourplexes.
Yep. So I had the duplex, a couple fourplexes, and even though I wasn't having to put a ton of money into these properties as down payments, they still had some repairs that needed done or some improvements as tenants moved out. And I realized, hey, this is still an expensive way to invest, at least for me at the time. I need to figure out a way, if I'm going to keep purchasing properties, to just put as little money into the down payment as possible. That was my thinking at the time. And seller financing was a strategy that, I don't know if someone brought it up or I just read about it, but came to my attention that potentially could work, could help me do that. Seller financing, if someone's not familiar, is where the seller, usually in traditional seller financing, they may not have a loan on the property, so they own the property free and clear, and they're in a position where they don't need all the money from the sale at closing. They're willing to act as the bank and accept payments over a certain amount of time at a certain interest rate at certain terms to accomplish that transaction. So everything is negotiable, which
Right.
means that it's possible to find a seller that doesn't need a large down payment. And that became what I was looking for. Like, hey, I'm going to try to look for someone that would be interested in seller financing a property and get to know them and build trust and show how I'm a good bet. I'm a good buyer for them. And I'm going to try to talk them into letting me buy a property without having to put too much down, which would allow me to scale at the time. And that's what I did.
That's awesome. And I think a lot of people don't realize, and sellers, obviously, you've done a good job of educating them, but there really is some benefit
Yeah.
to the sellers too, like the
To the
interest
right seller.
to
Yeah.
the right seller,
Hmm.
the interest that they could potentially accrue. And then what about capital gains?
Yeah, exactly. So if anyone's ever interested in trying to pursue seller financing purchases, uh, you need to be able to educate the sellers on it if they
Mhm.
aren't familiar, and you should understand it yourself. So the possible benefits are that if there's capital gains on the sale of that property, instead of realizing those capital gains at transaction or in that year, essentially they can spread those capital gains out over the life of the loan, over the life of the agreement, and only have that realized capital gain in the year that they collect payment, I guess, if that makes sense. I
Right.
might
Yeah.
have.
So if they have maybe not so much for their primary residence a lot of times, but if they've got an investment property they're wanting to
Mhm.
sell or a commercial property or some of these different niches that
Yeah,
I know that you've
yeah.
gotten into, it can be powerful. And once we flip the switch and realize that we're actually providing benefits to our sellers, I think that overcomes a lot of fear and inability to take action on buyers that are just learning about seller
Right, right.
financing.
Another big thing is, and it only works with the right seller. It's not common because if most of the time someone sells a property, they need the proceeds to go and put into the next property.
Yeah.
But that's not always the case. Sometimes there's landlords or people that have inherited properties or whatever that own a property and it's free and clear and they don't need that money for something specific. In fact, sometimes they're trying to figure out what they're going to do with that money. They know they want to sell the property,
Mhm.
but they don't know what they want to do with the money when they get it. They might want to invest it, but then they're thinking about, okay, do I trust the stock market? Depending on their age, they might be concerned about putting it into something that's risky. So if so, they're then maybe looking at CDs or bonds or savings accounts. And at that point, I can say, hey, if this is the type of thing you'd be looking at putting this money into, this is the type of return you would expect. And I can compete with that.
Right.
I can provide the same or maybe a better return in interest, and it can become mailbox money for you. And it's collateralized, meaning if I don't hold up my end of the agreement, you have the ability to take the property back and understand, and then you can sell it or do what you would want with it. But it's a pretty
Right.
secure, it's
Yeah,
a
the
secure bet. Yeah.
collateralization part is huge that you get it back, and hopefully, if you get it back in 5 years, the market's there's some appreciation
Right.
at play. There's a lot of goodness there. I personally have sold as the seller,
Nice.
utilizing seller financing, and it's really that is mailbox
Hmm.
money. It's pretty cool when that happens. Okay, so we've got the fourplexes. We're starting to use creative financing. What was your first creative finance purchase?
My first purchase was it was a 5-unit. There was a woman that I came in contact with from, I think, a cold text or a cold call. Another real estate investor in the area had given me her information. Hey, I'm talking to her. He was a flipper. And this was just from networking and seeing what other people were doing. But he said, she's willing to talk, but I'm not interested in this property as a flip. But it sounds like something you might be interested because you have all these other 2 fourplexes and you're looking for seller financing and whatever. So he gave me her information. Yeah, long story short, I talked to her. She was very anti what she would call big investors trying to buy my house cash. But once she realized that I was just a normal person trying to accrue or acquire some more rental properties, she was willing to talk. And actually, she lived in Texas, which I told you I was from Texas. I was heading back to Texas for Christmas and I ended up meeting up with her. I said, hey,
cool.
I'll be a couple hours away. How about I drive up and see you? And I can tell you what I'm looking for. We can talk about the property, this 5-unit that she'd owned for many years, owned free and clear. It was paid off. And yeah, ended up doing that, built some trust, explained what I would do, what my goals were, and understood what she was trying to get from it. And she just was a good candidate for seller financing. She was very frugal, had everything paid off. She didn't need the money for anything specific. And she was also a former military member. So she liked that part of the situation where it's one military member kind of trading off a property to the next. And yeah, we just negotiated it was a 30-year amortized loan. She didn't need a down payment, so I put nothing down on that property. And actually, sorry, it's a little bit more than that. I walked away with about $50,000 at closing on that property because the property needed some work. She said, hey, if you don't have the funds to make these improvements, I have some funds sitting in the bank. I'd be willing, since the property is worth enough to cover this, I'd be willing to lend you this and just wrap it into the loan, essentially.
Wow.
That's how it ended up.
That doesn't happen
right.
every day, does it?
I call this the unicorn deal.
That is a unicorn
Yeah.
deal. What state? North Carolina?
This was in North Carolina. Yeah.
Very
So
cool.
that was huge because I got into 5 more units. I ended up turning those all into Airbnbs, which at the time it seemed like a risky move, a new strategy, but really ended up paying off and being a great cash flow option. And then, yeah, that structure to where I walked away actually with money at closing allowed me to improve that property and also to purchase other properties in the future. And she was happy because she still feels, we still talk. She feels like she's dealing with someone that she trusts, someone that improved the property, so improved her collateral and is paying her exactly as agreed upon. In fact, we've since gone back and done refinances where we restructured the loan and I pulled out even more equity there. Again, this is not common at all, but if you don't ask for it, it doesn't happen. So yeah, that was the first deal, first unicorn deal, and it kind of propelled me on to others, but I haven't been able to find that exact deal again.
That is amazing. Oh yeah, here's 50 grand more. I love that. And that's all in residential. And then you've gotten into some niche strategies, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Sure. So cash flow is the main thing that I was always looking for. Cash flow was going to be the means potentially that I would give myself the opportunity to leave the military if I chose to, because now I have income from these properties on a regular monthly basis that I can live off of. So that was my focus. What properties, what strategies are going to maximize cash flow? As the market changes, as prices go up, as interest rates rise, cash flow sometimes can become harder and harder. So yeah, I became kind of asset class agnostic, looking for cash flow. And I was open to other asset classes, other strategies. Ended up partnering on a mobile home park, was the first kind of venture outside of just normal residential. I told you my mentor was a mobile home park owner, so I was always open to it. Learned a lot about it, read every book I could find on it, talked to other investors on it, and met a gentleman in my network there in North Carolina that was looking for his first mobile home park. His name is also Beau, funny enough. And my father, who's also an investor, had become interested in that asset class. And the three of us just connected at the right time. The other Beau found a mobile home park that he was trying to take down, and he had money lined up, investors lined up, right as COVID became a large issue, and some money dried up, or people weren't so keen on taking big risks, what they saw as big risks at the time. So my dad and I had the opportunity to partner with Beau as capital partners and go into this mobile home park. And that became an incredible cash flowing asset and still is. to this day
And
for us.
there's a lot of perception people have when they talk about mobile home parks. And with this particular project, you came in and did you buy the land and then collect lot rent from the
Y-
owners?
That is the main, yeah, that's the strategy that we wanted to work towards when we purchased the park. And to be clear, Beau, the other Beau, he's the boots on the ground operating partner. So he was always the active investor, and we were, yeah, like I said, capital partners. But what Beau was looking for was a park that either had that we would own like a minimal number of the homes or none of the homes, and we would just collect rent on the lots like you talked about. The park that we ended up buying, it was about 45 lots, and the previous owner owned maybe 15 or 20 of the homes. So when we purchased it, ended up on like seller finance, kind of lease to option agreements, selling those homes off to the residents so that then, hey, now
Okay.
they own the homes. They have pride of ownership in the homes. And we made it possible for them to do that. And for us, that was appealing because now we're just concerned with the land, the infrastructure, and collecting lot rent. So we're not repairing toilets in these mobile homes or things like that. That's the new owner of the homes, and we're just giving them a place to park those homes and collecting rent for that. So,
Oh, that's nice.
yeah.
Hey friends, if you're busy like me, you're always on the lookout for trusted professionals that can help you with your business, home, and investment needs. Whether it's a trusted lender, real estate professional, or a vendor that might be able to come in and work on your home or your investment property, there's always a need out there. And we want you to have great resources at the ready. So Boise Reen has developed an exclusive vendor directory chock full of businesses that are ready to help our community. Head on over to boisereen.com, grab your free copy today, and don't forget, let them know that Boise Reen sent you.
I know this was your first one, so maybe you didn't have a clear vision at that time, but is typically when you're purchasing a mobile home park like that, is the thought just constantly, having those homes there in perpetuity, or were you purchasing with a thought of future development for that land? Just curious.
This land I don't think had, well, actually, there's about 2 acres in the front that we have looked at putting 10 to 12 more pads on. It's in a small town, and that town hasn't been super receptive to us adding more pads to the park. But yeah, that was something that we had hoped to be able to do, and still we're looking at maybe doing that in the future. But that wasn't really the reason we bought the park. Had it not had that opportunity, we still were interested in the park just based off
Gotcha.
the
Okay.
current
So very
homes
different
and
than here in the Treasure Valley. We have a lot of areas, a lot of parks that have been transitioning,
right.
and there's been a lot of acquisition, like parks like Garden City, for
Yep.
example. And so I was always curious about that because I know people have different end goals, and it can be a great strategy for the other too if you're playing the long term, hold game
Yeah.
for the going into the path of progress.
Hmm.
So you've done the mobile. Now you're in the fourplexes, the fiveplex, mobile home
Yeah.
park. What came
Hmm.
next?
Um, at that point, our cash flow was a lot better than it was when we first started. And we were continuing to house hack in creative ways. I got married. My wife, Michelle, she doesn't like living in fourplexes, I'll put it that way, but
Either is
and
my
we
son's
haven't.
wife. Matt,
Yeah.
go figure.
And we haven't, but she has been very open to, we purchased a nice home that had a basement with a separate entrance, a mother-in-law suite type thing. And we rented out on Airbnb, and it paid the mortgage while we lived there. So there are other less intrusive creative ways to house hack, even when you're married and have a family and things like that. We're actually looking to do that here in Meridian. The home we purchased has a mother-in-law suite with a separate entrance that we're considering in the future potentially renting out an Airbnb as well. So sorry.
Yeah.
So cash flow was looking better, savings through house hacking and things like that. We were able to just save more, and it became possible to buy more properties at a quicker rate. So a few more single family homes, it just made sense. One was like a small little cabin in North Carolina that we turned into an Airbnb, another single family home that we turned into an Airbnb. And then I bought another portfolio. I found another seller that was interested in seller financing and able to consider that, and ended up buying 10 homes from him. So that
Wow.
was a large jump at the time. Yeah, that was a large jump, and still own those 10 homes, and a great relationship with that seller as well. He lives in Texas. Yeah,
Yeah.
go
I
ahead.
just want to interrupt you with that's a lot of doors and you're living in Idaho now. How are you managing? Do you still own those stores, first of all?
Yes.
And how are you managing them?
Yeah. So everything we've talked about at this point was in North Carolina, which
Okay.
is my first kind of duty station. I got an assignment after that. So I was there for 2 or 3 years. I think we probably had about 20 doors at that time, 20 to 25 doors. And that's when I was stationed or assigned back to Fort Rucker, Alabama, which is where I'd gone to flight school. So I was familiar with that
Sure.
market. So moved back there, decided to keep all of those properties in North Carolina. And that's when I started working out those long distance real estate muscles, long distance real estate investor muscles where I'm managing from afar. In the time that I was in North Carolina, self-managing, I had just built good relationships with contractors and cleaners and different vendors and property management companies in case I needed to throw in the towel and hand off those properties to them. But built good relationships that are mostly over text and phone anyways when I lived there. So when I moved to Alabama, I was still able to maintain those relationships and call on those people for inspections or repairs or things like that. No problem from states away.
Because
So
you had
that,
a kind of an all-encompassing job. When you're in the
Yeah.
air, you can't be like fielding tenant calls, right?
That's
So
true.
did you use VAs or anything, or did you just
I do now. I have a great VA, just one VA as my kind of property management assistant or admin assistant. But at the time, I was only ever away from my phone for 4 or 5 hours at a time. So most of the time that you can get back to a tenant within 4 or 5 hours, and
Sure.
that's understandable. So
you find there's very few true emergencies, right?
correct.
Like
Yeah.
sometimes they resolve themselves if you don't call them back for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Is what I found.
I call it being, instead of being proactive, I call it being slow active.
Ooh, I like
And
that.
sometimes being slow
Uh-huh.
active, like you said, problems just seem to solve themselves. And I'm not talking about specific to property management, but just in general. That's
Yeah.
a skill in the military I picked up.
I like that.
But yeah, I guess before I left, one of my contractors' wives, he only had one wife, right? One of my contractors, his wife, she had said, "Hey, I can help you with the management for these properties as a boots on the ground person." Her name was Donna. She was great. So for a few years, Donna and I worked together on the same Google Voice number, and she would help me a lot with tenant communications and things like that. So
Nice.
that helped.
Yeah, for sure.
Yep.
And then were you buying, did you transition to more properties in Alabama, or were you?
Yeah, so we moved back to Alabama, and Alabama is even a cheaper price point than North Carolina, or was at the time, and got there, and just my eyes were open to opportunities at that point, different ways to buy real estate creatively that's going to cash flow. Right when we moved there, there were some storage units that were for sale on the market, but I think I found them like the day they got posted on the market. It was the first call, and I was interested in that as a new asset class that potentially could be very passive if you set up the right systems. And ultimately, we ended up buying those storage units. My father partnered with me on that as well as storage units, and then connected to them was like a large warehouse building, not large, but like a metal warehouse building. So in one fell swoop, got 40 storage units and then a warehouse building that we ended up renting to a church, a Spanish-speaking church that needed a larger location. And boom, we're in the commercial real estate space.
Oh, I love it. Have you met Brian Underwood yet?
I have not.
Okay, you're going to meet him. He's part of our group, and you can talk about self-storage with
Okay.
him.
Oh, nice.
But his family they're huge into self-storage
Oh
in
yeah,
Southern
I listened to
California.
him a few weeks ago. He was on
Okay,
the podcast.
yeah. So it's just a fascinating asset class, and I love the hands-off piece of it.
Right.
So that was in Alabama.
That was in Alabama.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
Are you still in the military at this point? Because you were living
I
there.
am, yeah.
Are you still in the military?
Yeah. No, I'm out now.
Okay, I thought so.
But very
Yeah.
recently, yeah.
Right,
So
okay.
I'm very recently a full-time investor.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're at the storage units.
Yeah.
What came next?
So I don't know if I'm getting this all straight in my head, like exactly which came after which, but I ended up, there was a portfolio of single family homes. It was eight homes, 6 of them stick built. 2 of them were mobile homes, all just on this large kind of piece of land that came on the market. And we were able to negotiate a creative short-term seller finance deal on those, fix the properties up over time. And now we paid the seller off, and now we have a large line of credit on those, and we can use that to purchase other properties. So did some big, and this is myself and my dad, bought these properties that were, to be frank, owned by a slumlord, and we fixed them up and made them a good place to live. And that really helped us with rents as well, really raised the value on those properties, and then didn't refinance them. But now we have that line of credit that's allowed us to purchase other properties. So now I don't have to just rely on seller financing. We can make cash offers and self-fund deals, improve them over time, and then refinance on the back end.
Nice. Brilliant. All these things. And the theme I'm getting is like, as you build your muscle, like your investing muscle,
Right.
things just, you normalize that a little bit, because when you say those things, they all sound so huge and like, oh, another asset class and this and that. And like, oh my gosh, how would I manage all those? And you think about all the logistics, but you just explain it in such a way that it just seems so simple. And I think there's something to that, the way you've framed that in your mind, that you can just take action and it's not that big a deal.
Over time, it can become simple, right?
Right.
What I love about real estate is that it's individual projects that take a lot of work, but you can spend 6 months or so, 3 months or so on really working hard on those projects. But then you can set it up to be pretty passive after that. So then, yes, we buy a portfolio of 8 properties and it's a ton of work until it's not. And then it's just an awesome asset that continues to benefit us over time, even though we're not spending time on it anymore.
Right.
And then we can find the next big, scary, hard project and dedicate 6 months on it until it's passive and then move on to the next. And it's always a
Right.
challenge. It's always fun. I don't want to say it's always fun, but it's always a challenge,
Yeah.
but it doesn't, if every property stayed as time intensive as it is right when you buy it, I wouldn't be interested.
Of course.
That's the aspect of real estate investing that I really enjoy.
But this has been a pretty compressed amount of time, because we're not talking about 30 years here that you've done this. Like, what's the period of time when all this active investing has taken place? How many years?
I bought
around?
that duplex at the end of 2018. So it's 6 years, 5 years. Sorry.
5 years. And
You don't even have to be good at math to do
I
this stuff.
know, it's incredible. No, it's great. I think it's important, especially audiences that just listening to you don't see you. How old are you?
I'm 30.
30.
30.
Okay. So I counsel people all the time that are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s that are wanting to get started in real estate investing. And it's not too late. There are definitely huge things that everybody can do to further their careers. But if you're happy to be catching this and you're 20 years old, listen to this episode twice, is what I would say. And the action you can create and the difference makers in your life that you can create in a short period of time, whether you're 25 or whether you're 65, it can be huge. And you don't have to go all in for 40 years. You can go all in for a short amount of time and make massive difference in your financial future. And I love that you've obviously seen that. It sounds to me, it's almost like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to make a difference and do this. It's more painful to go slow, I find, in a lot of those things,
Yeah.
because when you're doing multiples and you're rinsing and repeating and creating your systems, you can do it a lot faster than if you like buy one thing,
Yeah.
wait 4 years,
Right.
okay, gear up the muscle to go approach a seller again. That can be miserable.
Right.
I love that you went fast.
We did go fast. A lot of it, and what everything you're saying is true, and I totally agree with. A lot of it was luck. A lot of it was, I believe, blessing. And yes, I took steps to put myself in the position to move on opportunities or to find opportunities,
Yeah.
but a lot of it you can't predict and you can't control, and in the market you certainly can't
Right.
predict or control.
And a lot of people,
Uh,
even in 2018, were saying it was too late.
Right,
Like
right.
people that were saying they were scared in 2012, and then by the time they got to 2018, it was too late, and they haven't
Exactly.
taken action today. So
Yeah, I had the
just think
benefit
it's
of
cool.
not knowing anything about real estate prior to
Right.
2018. So when I was looking at it, I just wanted to buy a duplex that I could house hack so I could see what it was about. And this was a market, I did know enough to know that, hey, this is a market that maybe you can cash flow in, both North Carolina and Alabama,
Right.
but not traditionally an appreciating market, a steady market, both outside military bases. And I was wrong. I mean, everyone was wrong. Over the pandemic and just a lot of black swan events that you can't really predict, that there was a lot of appreciation that I benefited greatly from and allowed me to do strategic kind of refinances and things like that. So all I'm trying to say is, was not in control. I believe all of it was a gift in some way, but you do have to take action and you got to get your foot in the door somehow to ever be able to benefit from the powers of real estate. Yeah.
Absolutely. When was your decision made to go ahead and did you take early retirement? What I'm not sure what the
Yeah, so I didn't
terminology is.
retire. I was in the military for 7 years, and really it became my goal after those first couple properties to replace my military income with real estate, what I would call passive income. And the plan was, if I can do that, once I've done that, if I still feel the same, exit the military if that's what feels right for me and my family. And we were excited by how quickly that happened, or it happened quicker than we had planned. And once it did, and once my commitment was up, because I had a certain commitment as an aviator after I went to flight school, I owed 6 years to the military. And once my commitment was up and we had those cash flow numbers, I decided to get out. Yeah. So very recently did I stop putting the uniform on. That would have been back in May. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Right before you moved to Boise.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
we didn't cover why you landed in Boise.
Sure. A lot of people that come to Boise and to Idaho saying about this, which as a real estate agent, they're coming from California
Right.
or other places, from higher priced markets, coming here. They already have a high paying job maybe, and they're coming here for a lower cost of living or maybe better affordability than what they're used to. I did the opposite, right? I left my job and then came from a very affordable cost of living area of Alabama and moved up here, which up here to me, it's higher cost of living.
Yeah.
But all of that, and I'm just joking, but the reason we did that, my wife has family in Nevada. So I say we wanted to be close to family without having to live in Nevada. Just joking. But we looked at a lot of different places, and I've always dreamed of living out west, whatever that means. The Colorados and the Montanas and the Wyomings of the world have always been super exciting to me. And as I learned about Idaho, I thought of it, they call it the hidden gem. And it still is, I think. It's still like a less overall. As I told people that we were considering Idaho, what's in Idaho? Potatoes?
Right.
Is the common question. But it just seemed like still a hidden gem, a way to live in a beautiful area with a ton of natural attraction and outdoorsy type activities my family and I could be involved in without maybe the prices of some of those other places that I mentioned. I think it's a great place to live and raise a family, which is my number one priority. I have two children. Yeah, we researched a lot of places, and Boise seemed like an incredible place to raise a family. So here we are.
I love it. Yeah, you're not unusual in that. Most people, yes, they do move to a lower cost, but I recently helped a couple that has lived in New York City and Jackson Hole and Park City and London, like all the places in all the cheap places, right? But my point with that is they could purchase anywhere in the world that they want to, and they landed on Meridian, Idaho.
That's awesome.
So there's something to it, and it's harder, I think, if we've lived here for years and years to see that from an outside perspective. But I travel. I know we go to other cities and we realize how incredible we have it here.
Yeah, special place.
It is. And I'm so glad that you landed here. What is your thought? I know everything can evolve and change quickly, and I look how much your life has changed in a period of 6 years. But do you have thoughts in the next 3 to 5 years of Beau's life, like where you want to see things with you and your family? Are you going to still be acquiring more properties, or have you achieved what you want to and you're going to kick back?
Not the kickback answer, but like I said, we have 2 kids, my wife and I. Nora, our daughter, she's 18 months old, soon to be 19 months old. And then we had a son earlier this month. He's a month old. So that is like the number one priority. And obviously will take a lot of time, but really, yeah, just putting my family in a place where we can grow together and enjoy being in an awesome place and just be the parent that I need to be. And I'm learning what that means, and I will learn what that means as it goes, but always want that to be able to be the first priority. And I'm super grateful that real estate has been a big part of the reason that I think I'll be able to spend more time on that than maybe I would otherwise. As far as continuing to invest, our situation has changed a little bit where there's not like a specific income or cash flow goal that we're trying to get to like we were for so long. I don't want to say I had nothing to lose then, but I was more thinking about, hey, here's what I have to gain. Here's what I'm working towards. I'm gonna run until I get there. And now it's a little bit more like, hey, I still love real estate and I want to continue investing and still look for cash flow opportunities and things like that. But I don't need to force it or be more aggressive than I need to. I just want to learn this market and see if there could be something I could be involved in here, and just keep my eyes open for things, and just over time continue to grow the portfolio. That's the way that I see it right now.
I love it.
Yeah.
And you see yourself in Idaho?
I do. Yeah. I
Yay.
do.
We're so glad to hear that. I think in my dozen years as an agent, I've only moved 2 families out of Idaho,
Really?
like that have come here.
Huh.
A couple of them just couldn't handle the snow. That was the thing.
Yeah.
And family is a pull too, sometimes to go out of state
Sure.
but 98% of them, I would say, stick around for sure. Maybe not in the same house because they didn't know where they wanted to be in the
Right.
state, but they fell in love with Idaho. One thing as we wrap up, I wanted to ask you, I know that a lot of people might be drawn to listening to this that are active military right now, and we have a thriving military population in and around the Treasure Valley. We've got Mountain Home, we've got our base here, and just wanted to see if you had any advice or thoughts on what you would tell them if they came to you asking for advice on how to get started in investing.
Yeah, education's the first thing. Like I said, I read those books and hundreds of other books after that, which I didn't mention, and things like Bigger Pockets, local resources similar to Boise Reen in your area that's just going to help educate you and introduce you to other players in the space. You can learn a ton from that. Specific to military, the VA loan, like we said earlier, is just an incredible benefit to where homeowners, VA purchasers, can buy a home and choose to put as little as nothing down, 0% down. There's no other programs like that I know of,
Right.
other than like creative seller financing type things. And there's a lot of other great protections, and it's just favorable loan terms all around compared to any other type of loan, is my understanding. So what a lot of people don't understand in the military is you can use a VA loan on up to 4 units under one roof. So the same way that you would buy a 3-bedroom single family home, you can buy a 4-unit apartment building, and that can be a great opportunity to house hack if you're in a situation, perhaps you're single or maybe not, but in a situation where you'd like to try to do something like that and really cut your teeth on buying a property, maybe renovating a property, and then at a small level learning how to be a landlord pretty close to you, just right across the walls from you.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's brilliant. And you're right. A lot of people don't realize that at all. There's so much, we could just go on in so much depth and so many different niches and strategies, but I think the overall message here is huge. And the power of taking action, the seller financing, thank you so much for unpacking that piece of it. The more that we see that we're in this like higher interest rate environment
Yeah.
for a period of time, I think that's really an important conversation. It's a very different
Yeah.
conversation when you got 3% interest rates that you're dealing with, and we can get a traditional VA or
Yes.
FHA. That's powerful, but it's a different conversation when it's 7%, right?
Yeah, everything's
So-
negotiable in seller financing.
It is. So is there anything else that we haven't covered that you want to make sure and have our community know, Beau?
I don't know. I don't think so. Like I said, we've been here not very long, and I'm thankful already to the Boise Reen community. I was really just looking for any and every way that I could meet people specific to real estate investing and see what people are doing here, see what I could learn from them, see what I could offer to them. And I met Matt Osanicki at a barbecue, and he said, "Hey, if that's what you're looking for, this is the community you need to look into.
Thank you,
These
Matt.
are the people." Yeah, Matt's the man. Also,
Yes.
former Blackhawk pilot. He and
Yes.
Kylie, I was a Blackhawk pilot in the Army. So that was our initial connection. But yeah, through Boise Reen, I've met Patrick Penner, who's doing a refinance for me right now on a property in Alabama. Ryan Weimer met at the last kind of luncheon, and he's all about that creative finance, creative structuring in the purchasing, wholesaling, flipping world. Met him and his team at Offering, Idaho, and talked a lot with them lately. And Mike
Great.
Turner, sorry, I know I'm
Yeah.
throwing out names, but I'm just
it's
an
great. I
example
think
of
it's
people.
important too to know like this is our vision. This is exactly why we created this, is to have investors, incredible investors with integrity at all levels involved with Boise Reen and making meaningful connections with one another. Because you can do training all day long, and there's some great national mentors and trainers and
Yeah.
all of that sort of thing, but I don't think there's anything like getting right across the table from somebody and breaking down a deal or how you can help one
Right.
another.
Right. Yeah. So all I'm trying to say is Boise Reen has provided that to me already. I believe it will continue to do that, and I want to be involved and give back to that. And really, you asked me if there's anything else I wanted to say. I am just trying to meet people in this space. I love talking about real estate, love talking about creative ways to look at real estate, looking at even considering different asset classes. So if anyone ever wants to chat about this stuff or teach me about the area or take me up to their cabin in McCall or something like that,
That's right.
that'd be
I think
great.
we have some retreats on the horizon or
Oh,
something. That would
perfect.
be fun. Well, thank you so much, Beau. This has been very educational. I learned a few things today. I know the audience is going to take away a bunch of value. And for all of you listening, I just want to thank you so much. The best compliment you can give to us is liking, subscribing, and writing us a review on Apple Podcasts. That would be hugely appreciated. And until next time, we'll see you on the next show. I hope you go and grow and have a fantastic day.
Well, that's a wrap for today. Thanks for joining me here at the Idaho Real Estate Investors Show. I hope you're leaving with new insights and inspiration to help you truly grow wealth through real estate. If you enjoyed the show, do me a favor. Please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with those that can benefit from it. Go and grow, and I'll catch you on the next episode.